Good morning, everybody. Sunny Bonani, Molo, Khuyamora, Tubela, Dumela, Lumela, Abusheni, Sanibona, Awani, Salibonani, and Mulweni. A very warm and hearty Mzansi, South Africa, welcome to you all. And here we are. Welcome to our very first ever broadcast by Chatterbox. And we are so excited to be bringing you this series of crowdcasts, starting with The Other Side, a COVID-19 special webinar survival series for the tourism and hospitality industry. My name is John Arvanitakis, and I'm going to be your host and besides the behind the scenes producer. So if anything goes wrong behind the scenes, you know who to blame. I really welcome you all joining us today. We are here for episode 1 in a series of 6 episodes. And the topic for today's webinar is designed to be a lifeboat, the SOS for the tourism sector. And today's topic is titled Leveraging Lockdown Past the Pandemic. It's really exciting to see that we have delegates from all around the world with us this morning. Really, very exciting. I've seen people from Tokyo, Australia, India, the United States, Germany, Britain. Good Lord, we really do have a global audience here with us today. So it's really, really exciting to see you all. And I hope that you're going to have a fantastic morning with us. I do know that it's going to be jam-packed. Our guest speakers have been preparing to present to you all week. And going through the rehearsals yesterday, I saw some amazing presentations. So you're really not going to want to go anywhere for the next 2 hours. So I hope you all have your cup of coffee and or a glass of water, or maybe even a glass of wine for those of you who may be at that time past the 12-hour mark in your country of residence where you're watching us from. And in the case that you're having wine, I hope it's a South African wine because we all know that South African wines are the very best. As I said, we are aiming to ensure that you get the maximum from our lineup of speakers today, each of whom have many years of experience in their respective areas of expertise, and they are all here today giving up their time to share their knowledge with us. No one is being paid to attend or to present at today's webinar. It's all voluntary, pro bono, and they're doing it because they are passionate, like you and I, about the tourism sector. And we are here to ensure that the tourism sector that we are all passionate about comes out of these extraordinary times with a fighting chance. Unfortunately, around the globe, the tourism sector has been the sector that's been the hardest hit by this COVID-19 virus that is spread around the world globally. And not only are we the hardest hits, but we're probably going to be the last to be able to recover from this as well. So we are joined today by folk who are passionate about the tourism sector and are wanting to share their best case studies with you to give you some hope and also to give you some knowledge so that you can continue to keep yourselves top of mind in the global tourism sector whilst people are online. And on that note, I was reading an article the other day which said that people are spending more than 77% more time on social media during this global lockdown than they have over the last month. So online platforms are really the place to be for marketing purposes and also to make sure that you are seen so that when the lockdowns are finally lifted around the world, people will be eager to travel. I know I certainly am. I'm already imagining where I'd like to go immediately after the lockdowns have been lifted. And it'll definitely be somewhere domestic in South Africa, because I do believe that we should all start with our domestic tourism sectors first to give support to the people that matter. And those are the people that have shared the pain with us in our various countries. Because as we know, international markets will probably be the last to open up when governments start to open up their borders and planes start to take off. But before we start, I would like to just go through some housekeeping with those of you who are not necessarily familiar with the Crowdcast platform. On the right of your screen, we have the chat room. This is now where you are able to network and meet your fellow attendees from around the world, I do encourage you to say hello and greet one another, get to mingle with one another in the networking room. You know, there's an opportunity for all of us, because this is a global platform and we're all online together. It's an opportunity for us to meet fellow tourism lovers and tourism product from around the world, and perhaps make a connection, and you can chat and share your own experiences with each other, so that we can all join this together. Like we should be sharing our secrets and our passion with one another. So please introduce yourselves in the chat room and let us know where you are from, so that we can all join one another. We've got loads of people online already, so we're welcoming everybody as they come on. I see the numbers are increasing as we go along, so we're almost ready to start. There's also polls at the bottom of the screen. You'll see a word that says polls. That's where we may put up some polls during the webinars in case there's interested information that we need to get from you. So keep your eye out on the poll section, and if you'd like to, we'd like you to encourage you to respond to the polls. Then, of course, there's an opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. Each panelist will present, and then we will have a half-hour question and answer session at the end. So I encourage you to ask questions to your panelists. They're here. They will be available for half an hour, and they will answer your questions. In order to ask a question, you can click on the plus sign next to the content box where you actually type your messages. Click on the little plus sign, it will say ask a question, and then a question will come into the ask a question dialog box, and we will, as I said, respond to your questions, as many as we can at the end once all the presenters have spoken. Then, of course, there is a call to action. Keep your eye out on that, because we're going to be sharing some exciting elements with you just after the conclusion of the webinar. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to the very first speaker. And now this is where I get to see whether I know what I am doing, because I need to bring up our very first speaker, and that is going to be Jan Hutton. So let's see how we get Jan onto this screen. So please bear with me. We did this test, and now for some reason I can't seem to bring Jan onto the screen. So, there we go. I'm bringing Jan up onto the screen now. Sorry, Jan. Here you go. There we go. Here we have Jan Hutton live on our screen. Jan, I think
hey, John, can you hear me?
I can hear you. And your video, please. Can you check your video, Jan, on your side? There we go. We have Jan Hutton. So for those of you who don't know, Jan Hutton is a very passionate South African, although she does live in the land of Oz at this present moment in time. But I do believe that that's just merely a physical place where she lives. Her heart's still very much in South Africa. She is very well known to most of you who are online here today, having previously been the Chief Marketing Officer at South African Tourism. Unfortunately, we lost Jan to our competitor nation of Australia, where she became the Chief Marketing Officer of the East Coast, I think it was the Golden Coast in Australia, where she was responsible for marketing the 2018 Commonwealth Games, and a fabulous job she did there, having had a look at the statistics and the arrivals there. And now Jan is with Destination New South Wales, where she is the the General Manager of Marketing. From humble beginnings as a junior community manager at Quirk. Oh, sorry, I picked up the wrong one. Jan Hutton.
You know what?
I told you.
We all have humble beginnings. It can apply to all of us.
The blooming auto cue. Jan is a storyteller with a message and a mission, a trusted travel and tourism advisor with highly tuned global marketing and brand building instincts, blended with a practical approach to strategic destination growth. Having acquired significant international experience as the former managing director with the Ogilvy Group, Director and Board Member of the Nielsen Company, CMO of South African Tourism, CMO of Deloitte Consulting Africa, CMO of Destination Gold Coast, and she's currently General Marketing Manager for Destination New South Wales. Jan's career path has been deliberately unconventional, a well-regarded travel market leader, a clear thinker with an ambitious spirit. Jan makes an impact by bringing insight and inspiration to maximize results. And I needn't say any further. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jan.
Hi. So, John, I would like to just respond to your introduction, if you don't mind, before I bring up my presentation, if I can, just very briefly.
Yes, of course.
First of all, just to say that it means the world to me to see so many familiar names and faces, people whose faces I probably haven't seen in too long. It is such a privilege, and as John has said, I fly the flag very highly, and it's not just where I find myself today, but I travel a lot around the world, and I'm involved with other tourism projects on a global scale, and I have Africa in my veins very proudly, and I can almost feel myself getting a little emotional seeing so many people's names that I remember. So yes, I'm passionate about our industry. I'm passionate about it on a global scale, and you'll see some learnings that I'm going to share that relate to Australia, but they're actually just common sense findings and very, hopefully very practical insights that you will see not about Australia, just about our industry, about you and I, and hopefully they're things that can make a big difference to your business. So yeah, I think there'll be a Q&A at the end, but thank you for spending time with all of us and for joining us. We're proud to be able to serve you today. John, can I bring up my presentation?
Please do, Jan. Let's go.
It's saying.
Okay, I need to. Apologies for that. I need to kick off one of our speakers. Sorry. Oops. There we go. They'll be back. Don't worry. They haven't gone forever. Okay, Jan, try again.
Okay, got it.
Good.
Okay. Here we go. So I'm hoping you can all see my presentation. John, can you just give me a yes so you can see it so I can get going?
We're ready to go. Jan, you're up and ready.
Fantastic. So the theme of my presentation today is really staying connected amidst a double punch. I'm going to share some insights and learnings, and I'm going to be pretty vulnerable about the things that maybe I've done wrong along the way, and hopefully you can all learn from me and take advantage of the fact that I maybe learned the hard way, having had a pretty tough 12 months. So jumping right into it, the concept of staying connected is such a broad one, and I thought it would just be irresponsible if I didn't really explain what connection means. It goes without saying that connection is about aviation and how we all stay connected, how our traveler stays connected. It's about our industry. It's about how we collaborate. And one thing I can tell you from all the data I've seen around the world is that if we win, it is only because we are collaborating at different levels to what we ever have before. There is no such thing as competition anymore. There's only collaboration. Community. The connection of community at times like this where we've been through lockdown in COVID and just coming out the back of bushfires, learning the power of connection to community has been a really humbling and important part of what connection means to me. Government, so, government plays a really important role. Truthfully, what I'm seeing around the world, the government are actually leading from a funding and a strategic perspective a lot of the policy and transformation strategies. So the role of government and how they are listening and how they are contributing in building up frameworks and solutions that assist the private sector are more important than ever. And self, us, just as people, how we remain connected. I mean, the one thing that you will read at the moment, and it certainly applied very much through our Australian real crises of bushfire disaster period, was just mental health and how we actually remain connected to ourselves, how we miss our connection to Mother Nature, and just that sense of connection internally as well. So connection, I guess what I'm saying, is a very broad concept. But I'm just going to start off with the central nervous system of travel, which I think we would all agree is aviation. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of reading, but I had to read this to you because I think it's quite profound. The number of daily flights, this is global data, has fallen by 80% since the start of this year. Currently, around 17,000 aircraft are parked at airports. That represents 2/3 of the global fleet of all airlines around the world are parked. Airline, airports, ground handling are hemorrhaging. We all know that. There's widespread job loss around the world. British Airways, parent company IAG, has announced this last Tuesday that's just passed, that they're going to be cutting up to 12,000 jobs from their 42,000 strong workforce. They said that they do not expect BA to see passenger demand return to 2019 levels for several years. This is not a 12, 24-month solution, several years. EasyJet has laid off 4,000 of the UK-based cabin crew for 2 months. Qantas, 20,000 people put on leave. 700 pilots at American Airlines have agreed to take early retirement. So from a connection perspective, we can have the best strategies in the world, but as we all know, access is vital, and this is the state of our central nervous system. This is what we're looking at. And I don't mean to sound so negative, but this is deeply sobering, and I think it's important that we hold this in context when I talk about the role of connection on all of those levels. So I started off going on Christmas holidays, like everybody, just, around about the 20th of December. I had an amazing trip planned, and halfway through December, everybody was called back as the most horrific fires raged through Australia. And I know so many dear friends who lost their homes. I know people that lost loved ones. I know people that lost pets. But I know many, many, many hundreds of people that lost their livelihood. And trying to rebuild tourism in the face of that has taught me many things, and it was traumatic and deeply humbling. I did a lot of global research, and one of the things that I found really important, and I hope this is valuable to you, is to start to manage recovery expectations. And this is vital because it talks to us about why we need to diversify our business in so many ways. But the impact of crises on our tourism sector can really vary greatly and last way longer than the cleanup or the physical recovery of the event. That would apply to COVID, but right now I'm just talking about bushfires. So if you can see that little graph on the side there, political turmoil, this is from the WTTC data. Political turmoil on average, it takes over 26 months. Terrorism, 13 months because it's more hyperlocal. Pandemic, 21 months. And environmental disaster, like I was dealing with wholesale fires that ripped across Australia, 23 months. So if you start putting a pandemic on top of an environmental disaster, you're looking at almost 4 years spent in recovery. And yeah, they're almost impossible to sustain itself. So part of the global research I looked at was this really powerful data that came out of Monash University, and they were talking about visitation recovery. This is looking through the lens of bushfire, not a pandemic. And what they said is that on the apex of looking at likelihood of visiting versus time after disaster, 1 to 6 months, up to 50% of people would return in terms of visitors. And by the way, and I'll touch on this later, a lot of data that shows the power of loyalty, because it was all of that 50%, 72% was nostalgic. All of that's repeat visitation, people that always go there for Christmas, always go there for Easter. So that 50% in the first 6 months is crucial. Then your 6 to 12 months, 55%. So not a lot, it's only jumped 5%. It's not a lot. And then up to 2 years, 75%. So you can see that likelihood of visiting in time after disaster really do require a lot of management in how you build out your strategies. This is general data. I'm applying it to Australia, but it's general data that I got out of UNWTO. The key thing about this is to show us that sustainable tourism is now expected, and also that this is the new normal. Disaster management and being in a phase of recovery is the new normal. So all this data is meant to represent is over the next 4 years, looking at, from an Australian perspective, disaster, being in a state of disaster on the left-hand side, being in a situation of having part fires and part recovery, meaning basically that some fires are put out in some states, but some fires are still burning in others. And then there are no fires, we're in full recovery. And you can just see how cyclical that is. And it doesn't matter, honestly, if we're talking about floods or fires or drought or honestly, like even hailstorms, I can go on, but this is the natural environment. There's enough data. I'm the biggest greenie, and I unapologetically will talk about sustainable tourism. I don't talk about it from a tree-hugging perspective, although I believe that's actually really important and nurturing our natural assets to keep tourism sustainable, but I'm talking about sustainable from a revenue perspective. And when you look at these new cycles and how this is expected to continue year after year, our fires were only put out 3 months ago, fully put out. And September is when they started. So we're in 5 months' time, we're right back to where we started and what is going to be the state of our fires. So this isn't a passing phase. However, I really want to say that there's so much data out there, and I've looked at so much of it. I could list sources of data. And I want to just caution people that data doesn't make meaning, people do. Please make sure that the data that you are referencing, that you've got access to, is quality data. I usually go at times like this to WTTC, to UWTO, to TSI, if you don't know, the Tourism Sentiment Index, etc. So make sure that you are getting the right data, because if you go back to this and you start building out strategies and it's not the right data, you won't be helping your business. So one of the things that I did in looking at what was happening around the world is I referenced California, knowing that they understood, as well as Australia, the crises of dealing with large-scale bushfires that could just cripple a country, cripple a state. So I just want to play this because it shows about the power of love, and I took a lot of learnings out of it. This is still looking at
There's a lot to love about California.
And as wildfires painfully reminded us, with love can come loss.
Our hearts ache for those who lost so much.
But you can help.
Please, donate.
Whatever you can give.
Please.
Please.
Please. And come visit. It helps affected communities get back on their feet.
So join us.
Show your California love.
And know that California loves you back.
So the reason I wanted to share that is because this data was profound. I got this data, again, out of Monash University, but what it says is the empathy and celebrity endorsement are seen as the most effective in generating emotional response, building that travel intention, which can, at that point, was so waning. There's so much data now that if you start looking, you'll see that this whole philosophy of being open for business, it's too binary. It's seen as contrived. It lacks credibility. But being able to tap into that, that spirit of compassion, and being able to come out with, like the video you just saw, but a positioning that literally invites people, unashamedly says, you know, we need you, that your contribution to our state is essential and most needed right now. So you'll see what we did is we came out with a positioning that was basically, our comeback starts with you coming back. And it was done as literally an emotional plea for visitation to rural and regional communities that relied upon and do rely upon visitors and the importance of tourism. So I just thought this was important for you to be aware of. And the one thing that does show is that price reductions and discounting are totally discouraged. That at a time where we need to actually be competitive, yes, but we need to be driving yield and not foot traffic. It's much more about the emotion and the advocacy. So this was our positioning. We came up with this. It was really looking at communities that were still intact and saying our comeback story starts with you coming back. And it was a whole invitation that was built around that. And you'll see on the right-hand side, the logo, now's the time to love New South Wales, with the hand hearts in the middle of it. And that was really meant to actually create a lot of UGC and a human brand with hands being right in the middle of it in terms of our positioning. So, I mean, I'll touch on that a little bit more. This slide is meant to just show you two things. One, I spoke to you about the time it takes for recovery, but our recovery plan we built out was crawl, walk, run. And it looked at our crawl was all about what is today, the 3 to 6 months, what can we do? It's a deep dive into industry support, skills development, anything ultimately that is a focus on industry. And to the extent that you could apply this to COVID, then it's much more around understanding the travel restrictions and making sure that you align your marketing and your business strategy around that. So looking at where those restrictions start, and I'll talk more to that. But all I wanted to show you here is that you need to have a staggered 2-year recovery plan. There need to be quick wins. There needs to be those medium-term opportunities, and then there needs to be a future state where you're running towards. And that's really essential. And at the same time, always on, the social media messaging sits beneath that the whole time, making sure that your messaging stack, your architecture supports those three phases, both from a creative and a content perspective. So I know there are going to be questions towards the end of this, and I hopefully I'm not going too fast, but I now want to jump into COVID-19. So I'll just say that we got to the end of bushfires broken. We'd worked crazy hours. Every second phone call was one that you were wiping your eyes, people that were just in dire straits, an industry that was just on its knees. And literally we had about a month and a half's grace, maybe just almost 2 months grace before COVID started, although not meaningfully, it started. And it wasn't long before we realized that we were now, really staring down a global pandemic. So we started building out a response strategy. This was actually something that was developed by Treasury across Australia, and it's very simplistic, but it just says respond, recover, reform, sustain. And then we built out strategies aligned to that. That basically said, what does response look like? It's going to be a reaction because we haven't got a strategy. We're in uncharted territory. But how do we build out our respond strategy? And again, with a deep dive into looking at what does industry need today? It's all about industry. And that's been one of the key things for me, actually, at a personal level, is to just really be reminded that we as government are not the custodians of our tourism sector. We are meant to augment our tourism sector. We are meant to be a conduit, but our industry are the custodians of our sector. And God, it's our job to be there to support. And in moments like this, more so than ever. Then we went into a full recovery mode, which started to really look at how we would start sowing demand generation strategies, and reform was where restrictions would start to be released and relaxed, and we'd then be able to capitalize and convert that demand that we had stimulated. So moving from recovery, which was kind of couch inspiration within the travel restrictions, right into reformation, looking at what does the future of our industry look like? What is our new world order? What are our new product orders going to look like when we get to the other side, the businesses that won't have survived this? The new pricing strategies, because we know that social distancing is the new norm. So, if we're going to have half a plane taken out and half of restaurant seats taken out and half of cruise line seat, accommodation taken out, and the new pricing strategies as an example, how do we reform our industry and make sure that it's relevant? And then deep in my heart is sustainability, looking at culture, community, environment, and revenue. So, yep. These are the primary pathways that I believe we're looking at. The first one is saying that it's clear. Your businesses will all be in different stages of this, but there's a clear strategic pathway. You know where you're going. You've got a solution. You're able to kind of ride the storm. Or there are 2 or 3 clear pathways. It's A, B, C. You know what your options are. Or there's a range of options. You actually have no idea, but there's a pendulum swinging, and somewhere between this end of the bracket and that end of the bracket, and we don't know how it's going to play out. We do not understand what the alternate futures look like. And then finally, unclear. We don't understand what tourism is going to look like on the other side of this from every level. The mindset, the bruised psyche of our consumer, aviation, connectivity, and load factors that are going to be so radically shifted, and pricing as a result of that. The experience matrix of what experiences our audiences are going to be looking for, and we certainly know, for instance, that they're going to be moving away from high density experiences, that urban CBD experience, and they're going to be looking for things that are much more around the things that we took for granted and that we now appreciate more than ever in kind of nature-based tourism. But not being clear about what that future state looks like. So building out, you need to know which of these your business is dealing with, and it sometimes wavers. These are just some new normal points that I thought I would share with you. Uncertainty is the new norm. Forgive me, there's a spelling mistake there. That's what happens when you're working on a presentation late at night. But it is. Uncertainty is the new normal. And the vital thing there is that it means that we need mental resilience, and we need agility, and we need to be able to course correct on a regular basis, because everything I even share with you now, if we have a second wave of COVID, trust me, there'll be a whole different list of trends on this slide. So uncertainty is not something you can wait to be resolved. This is the new normal. How you navigate amidst it is going to be the success of business. Economic hardship and cautious optimism. Just as an Australian example, somewhere between 9 and 16% is the new forecast unemployment level. And that has not been the unemployment level. It hasn't gone above 7% in 40 years. So that's a big thing for Australia. So now we're looking at reduced disposable income and understanding that travel is seen as a luxury. So understanding what that means for our industry is vital. Repeat visitation and domestic bliss. I can tell you all the data shows the power of loyalty now more than ever. And we're already starting to gauge our industry and look at kind of some of our retargeting strategies, working with their consumer databases to make sure that we're really able to leverage their existing loyalty. Localhood, there's a lot of data that shows that we thought people would come out of COVID-19 with the sense of being, released from this cage. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. As I mentioned earlier, there's this bruised psyche that is quite traumatic, and people have really experienced personal fear at a different level. So people are almost operating within these tiny little concentric circles, and localhood is now everything. And what they're saying, the data is saying, is that we get to go from relaxed restrictions where we're able to travel slightly, and that's going to convert into day trips. We need to redefine what our visitor economy revenue model looks like, how we measure it, because now day trips are going to be huge, and how we build out that ecosystem to understand, even expenditure and experiences in restaurants and cellar doors and wineries, and how we build that out and track and measure that's going to become essential. And then moving away from that into short breaks on weekends and road trips, which I'm going to talk to more just now. And ultimately from intrastate into interstate domestic tourism, and then short haul international, and then long haul international. And that is a minimum of a 2-year program. So just understanding how you capitalize on that is really important. Social distancing, I touched on it earlier. This is 100%, even everything that I'm reading is pre-vaccination, post-vaccination, but they're saying even post-vaccination, I know it's going to sound humorous, but they're literally looking at perspex cubicles that they can put on the beach in Greece, because they know people will not be flocking back to the beaches. They're looking at these little bots that they can release. And narrators are doing this amazing thing at IHG as well, in the ISCON, where they're releasing these little UV robots that go in and scan and sanitize a room, because they know that how important that's becoming. Social distancing and the whole concept of sanitization is crucial. If you remove 1/3 or 50% of a restaurant, their whole revenue model changes. So gearing around social distancing and your experiences and your accommodation and everything you do is going to become essential. Nature-based experiences, we're anticipating are going to go through the roof. More than ever, there is this desire to be out in the wild, to be out in nature. The things we took for granted, we now appreciate with deep gratification. So whether that is even within the CBD or it's outside of it, doesn't matter, but nature-based experiences are crucial. Festivals and business events, at the moment, the jury's out. I'm looking at a lot of data that says it's going to be some time, that is 2 years, in looking at how we can regroup in certain numbers and enjoy the sense of community and culture, the value of festivals. And business events, which as we all know is our most high yield category, is also very much in dire straits at the moment. Visiting friends and family has never really been a crucial part of tourism, but now we're actually going, hang on a second, how do we now start to track and measure the lifetime value of a visitor instead of the one-time value? If that's the case, then VFR becomes absolutely essential, because people will go to stay with family much faster than they will to a hotel right now. So VFR is a really important part of just how we build out our strategies. One of the things that I've done is I've started this project Bounce Back. And essentially the crux of it was that we built out a strong emotional territory on the back of bushfires, which was this plea, as I mentioned earlier, like, I'll come back before we start with you coming back. So, 80% of the way through a really expensive television commercial production, only to realize that it's now fully redundant. It has no bearing on the COVID context. So we started realigning and building out Project Bounce Back, which is developing an evidence-based marketing plan to really accelerate demand and reimagine consumer marketing to stimulate demand positively impact our visitor economy in a very different way. This has been important. Part of regaining visitation in our strategy here was to come up with this really solid space called Now's the Time to Love New South Wales, which is the premium state across Australia, as you'll know. But the three things we learned in our strategy is that we've got to overcome the perceived risk. That's absolutely essential. We've got to be able to counteract travel intent and how we're able to stimulate and motivate it again in a very different way. And that is actually just rectifying and redeeming maybe even destination image. So the identity of your sense of place, so that people see it as a place that has actually recovered and a place that they wish to return to. So these were kind of the core pillars that we felt were important as part of how we built our strategy. We had three simple objectives: ignite the holiday dream, inspire planning, relaunch domestic campaign, and I'm going to touch more on the role between domestic and international, so I won't get into that here, and then very importantly, support industry. And that was all the basics of our programs that support industry, our toolkits that support industry, pricing strategies, and cooperative funding where we could redirect it, making sure that our industry felt our support. So this was our sobering context. We looked at our restrictions, which everybody on the call have different restrictions. We looked at affordability, which I spoke to, and disposable income. Disposable income reduced, the cost of travel going up based on the new shape of it. Travel intent massively reduced, media ineffective, and people not feeling safe. And they needed to feel safe in these different areas. We realized that we were now actually in the business of selling peace of mind. They wanted a sanitized destination, a place that had managed COVID well, managed the risk of bushfires and anything along those lines. Product that was intact, that was safe for them to be in, as I spoke about some of those global hotel chains that have done a phenomenal job. They actually, their primary marketing strategy says that they sanitize their rooms with these UV wands, twice a day. So we're not selling, it's not even a pricing strategy, it's selling peace of mind. Flexibility and return policy. So flexibility meaning, pay now and you can change your dates within 12 months, and these are our return policies. So we're dealing with very practical things here. This is not just about high glossy marketing. This is about being smart and how we actually message our destination. So this is essentially where we got to. We built out these three phases. The first one is respond, as I mentioned to you. The second one was recover. The third one is reform. And between reform and recover, that's really where our Project Bounce Back is focused between July and December. And I'm going to touch more on that in a minute. This is the strategy that I've developed. It's really looking at survival across to recovery and the three phases I've spoken to. The criteria really at the top being border closures, phase 2 moving into partial lift, and phase 3 borders are open. And then looking at our travel situation. So domestic and international travel restrictions, and then moving into domestic restrictions being lifted, which probably was a little optimistic. The consumer mindset, so from absolute hibernation and lockdown, and looking at that consumer mindset and how we're able to cater to it. Intent, so again, phase 1, all about dreaming and escape. It's about couch inspiration, it's about virtual experiences, and we built out so many of your content strategy here is vital, looking at how you build out virtual hikes and virtual experiences, virtual wine tours, etc. Phase 2 in recovery is all about now we're starting to stimulate planning, moving further down our path to purchase, and then ultimately driving bookings, really pushing conversion in our journey. You can see where we're playing in the funnel as well. I've just taken out our call to action. Obviously, some of this is a little bit commercial in confidence, so I've left a few things out. But looking at our call to action, our target audience, key partnerships, and what we do in terms of some of our messaging. But this is the thing. So I grew up as a person, as John has introduced me, I am absolutely an unconventional marketer. I felt that sometimes it didn't serve me, but in times like this, I have a lot of peace of mind that it's actually served me in more ways than one. I guess what I'm saying is that I never believed in the 4 Ps of marketing. I am much more of a place development person in my kind of business acumen than I am a pure marketer. But I will say that DMOs need to move away from this one-dimensional thing of promotion. We need to, at this point, get back to basics. It's absolutely about product, what product exists, how it's shaped, how we can take product and put a bow around it and turn it into this high quality, distinctive experience. Our pricing strategies, our sense of place, looking at regional differentiation, so we can drive dispersal. So making sure product, price, place, and promotion work together has become more important than ever. I'm a big fan of branding. And as the previous slide, as I just spoke about the power of experience, I just want to reiterate, brand is not a logo. It is nothing other than the tapestry of the stories that people tell about your experience, your product, or your place. That's what branding is, because our share of voice as a brand owner, our budgets cannot compete with the 30 million people that come to New South Wales every year. So we need to use them as our foot traffic. We need to use them as our troops and as our advocates of our brand. So art, science, and heart is the way I'm seeing this, and the role of brands right now, and how your brand is engaging those audiences while they are captive at home has been so important. I would spend so much money with smart media strategies trying to get into people's share of mind and get their attention. And now we don't have to. They're at home, they're looking for cool content. So the creative part and how you build out high quality, distinctive experiences is so important. The science, the data that you find and apply and really sharpening your priority audience is now more important than ever. In your media strategy, your measurement plans, and understanding your audience, obsessing about your audience, you should not have more than a primary or secondary audience unless you've got crazy money. And heart, brands that have purpose, brands that stand for something, brands that want to make a difference, brands that want to give back. These are the brands that people are supporting. That's so important. So just bearing in mind that the role of your brand relationship with your consumer is more important now than ever. So domestic versus international, it's all about timing, and I'm not going to spend time on this because honestly, this is a moving feast. But what I will say is that at the moment, 70–80% of all of our revenue comes from domestic tourism, like most places around the world, and international is where we drive our growth strategy. So that's where we bring Forex into the country. It's a really important part of our tourism. But ultimately at this stage, with the restrictions being what they are, and Australia being what it is, where it's essentially a long-haul destination, we just really have redirected everything across to domestic. And now domestic, which has often been overlooked and not given the same level of investment and treatment and focus and priority, is now more critical than ever. So I won't go into all the detail here, but just making sure that across these phases, you understand what the primary pillars are. You understand exactly what your paid activity is. You understand what digital assets you have. We've got 13 websites around the world and lots of social channels and platforms. And it's just more important than ever that your domestic strategy is well considered across your different phases. Your messaging aligns to that, your creative aligns to that, your audience mindset aligns to that, and that you know exactly what channel you're investing in and why, and what assets you can leverage off your own. So I thought I would just look at this because I think there's an anomaly here. Social distancing versus social media. I just want to say that right through the bushfires, we had to pull right back on all of our media planning. So how we even managed the penalties of campaigns and media that we had already booked was really, took some negotiating. The one thing we never reduced, in fact, we doubled down on social. We knew that our social conversation was going to be more important than ever. It was the one thing that was a conversation. It was not pushing out a message. Just like this image shows, it was something in people's hands. It was personal. It was in their home. That we could move from information to inspiration, from inspiration to information, and juggle that process of sharing vital information and also being able to really make sure that we're touching, reaching, inspiring people, building that sense of demand and making sure that we could capitalize on it, that we could convert it when we were ready. So the way you tell your story as a brand and how you engage your audiences right now is so important. Please continue to double down on your social media investment. And I mean the investment in terms of paid, earned, and shared and owned. Virtual experiences on social, the content that you develop is vital. We built out an entire bank of over 42 different virtual experiences and took people from their home into those experiences as if they were there. So looking at the way technology can support your content strategy, the regularity in which you serve your content, how you track and measure it, the formats that you build out, your editorial governance around that, all of that, that's really important. And I wanted to say congratulations to Cape Town, because absolutely it's a place that is worth the wait. And the reason I just had to share that, because there are so many examples I've looked at, must be at least 18 or 20 different global examples of videos that have been produced. And some of them are powerful, but they're all starting to sound very much the same. So it's so important to get cut through, to get your share of heart and mind that you're coming up with for your brand, for your product, for your destination, that you're coming up with a positioning that is solid. And I really do commend Cape Town for building a video that I believe was really authentic, emotive, a sincere positioning, and certainly it is a place in my books that is very, very worth the wait. Road tripping, I just want to say, is gold right now. Please, every person needs to have a road trip strategy. As it says here, they're an essential part of diversifying our tourism revenue post-COVID, leveraging the bruised emotional mindset of our consumer and the slowly relaxing of our travel restrictions. We know the cruise and aviation shake up, they're on their knees, as I said, and we are seeing travelers fulfill their wanderlust by cars. So this is important. It's more important than ever to support regional towns who rely so heavily on our drive market and their local communities, both economically and socially. Road trips for us and for me, and the way we're building out our strategies, are absolutely vital in stimulating dispersal beyond major hubs, as well as the linkages to key visitor experiences and beyond that urban density. Because there is some evidence, and it's nothing. It's not to say that the cities and the Cape Towns and the New Yorks of the world are not going to recover, but there is absolutely the sense of forecasting that high density tourism is going to reduce. So whether it's in your CBD and you're able to leverage natural assets, or whether it's on the periphery and you're moving people out into regional areas, that road trips are going to play a really, really important role of that. So I thought I'd just share some of the things we're looking at regional distribution around road trips. I won't spend much time here, but there really are 4 very distinctive strategies in how you push out that regional travel and make sure that you're able to create pathways to high quality, distinctive experiences that you know there's a really existing demand with your priority audience. So whether it's the hub or loop or trail or A to B, how do you plan your most distinctive experiences, almost as if they're pearls along a string, in a necklace? How do you plan those and package those up for your audiences in a way that you're able to reach the right regional communities through these 4 road tripping plans? So I'm sorry, I've spoken fast, but I've got through a lot of information in as short a time as I possibly could. And I appreciate you being patient with me. So John, I don't know if you want me to just pause there, if you want me to just hold off, or if you want to move on to something else. I can absolutely elaborate on anything that I've touched on, or I could rather just wait until the end and I could take questions when you're ready.
Hi, Jan. Okay, so I think what we should do is thank you very much for the most insightful presentation that I have seen to date on the tourism sector. I know you were speaking from an Australian perspective, but whatever you're applying in Australia can most definitely work globally, and it's something that South Africa should also be considering, and any other global DMO at this present moment in time. I think they can learn a lot from what Australia is doing at this present moment in time, and I must say, I really, really, really am very grateful to you for sharing what you did with us today, and I think everybody else is also just as appreciative of it, if I can see the comments that are coming through. I think we've learned a lot. We've got the other 2 speakers that are standing by and ready to come and do their thing as well. So if you don't mind, let's hold off until the Q&A session, and then if there's anything that any of our delegates would like us to elaborate on, or would like you to elaborate on, they can pop a question into the Ask a Question poll. And we've also just put up a poll here now just to get a key insight as to whether or not the tourism authorities should be focusing on domestic or international tourism as the key to unlocking the tourism sector as we go forward post the COVID-19 period. So Jan, thank you very much. I think you would love to have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. It's your time there. And as I said, I hope it's a South African wine. And we'll welcome you back for the Q&A session in about an hour's time from now. I'm now going to call on William to come up and have his say. Oh gosh, William.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Cool.
William, nice to see you, and that was a really good introduction there, coming up there with your mask. I think you gave us all the lessons on how to take a mask off. Love to see how you put a mask on.
No, let's not go there. Some things are better left alone.
Okay, everybody, as you can see in front of you, you have William Price. Now, William is also very well known to the global tourism sector. He's an international speaker. William also previously was part of the South African Tourism Organization. In his day, William was responsible for introducing the Meet South Africa campaign, instrumental in setting it all up. He was also instrumental in introducing the very first Insta-meets in South Africa with travel bloggers that he brought out from various different destinations around the world to come and meet South Africa. And obviously had tech talks and all sorts of things like that at the Tourism in Davos. So let's just tell you a little bit about William as he is known. William is a long-standing ambassador of travel and tourism in South Africa, as I said, and beyond. He's gifted with a firm affinity for the industry. He has paired decades of digital wisdom with his knowledge of tourism to help demystify social media and online marketing to the hospitality trade. Having mastered his craft during a 2-year stint as Chief Technology Officer at Flights.com and a further 7 years as Global E-Marketing Manager for Digital at South African Tourism, William has gone on to lead formidable digital and branding endeavors at Man and Machine, Fog Agency, Micro Agency, the OMG, and of course, his recent endeavor is #HackTourism, 3 of which he successfully founded himself. With over 25 years of marketing, communications, and digital experience under his belt, William brings his empowering expertise to the table. William shares generously what he knows, that I can tell you for sure, and he's present here today is testament to that, with the confidence of an established master and the humility of a natural-born leader. And of course, those words are very true about William, and you will all know that William is one of my go-to people in terms of digital and online, because I do believe he is the master at it. So I encourage you to stick around and listen to what he has to say, because he's definitely going to give you some really useful insight to what Jan was talking about, being online social media at present, because that is where you need to be, and that's where you need to be spending your money if you have, or otherwise just making sure that you continue your social media presence even without spending anything. So William, I'm going to hand over to you now, and I'm going to say goodbye.
Excellent. Well, John, thanks very much. It certainly isn't very easy to kind of sit and watch yourself on the screen while someone's talking, about you and going off on that introduction. So thanks for making it a brand new experience. Very excited to be here. I think for all of us who've been getting ready for the session in the last couple of days, it's really been fun just to be able to work on, the slides and putting the dialogue and the narrative together for what we want to cover today. And I think my job today is really just going to be around trying to bring together the secret sauce that we've started to notice and we've started to kind of grapple with as we've done lots of work, in South Africa and throughout the rest of the world in, trying to help destinations understand how they could better leverage online and digital and social. And there've been a couple of things that have started to come together that we see being applicable in all of those different environments, whether we've done work in Malawi or whether we've done work in Finland. So I'd like to try and share some of those things with you today. But I think just to kind of make things a little more social, what I'd like us to do is just take a look at these 3 hashtags that we're using to promote this event specifically. And if I could just ask you for one quick moment to just reach for your mobile phones, and I want you to take a picture of something that's going to help us remember and help us see how it is you're experiencing this webinar. I mean, we've seen people dialing in from all over the world. What I think would be really great is if we could each take a photo of what we are seeing on screen right now and use these hashtags just to kind of categorize that content. And let's just share that, whether you're sharing that on Twitter or Instagram or even on Facebook. It would be great just to see what you guys are kind of looking at and how you guys are experiencing this as it's kind of like changing the way that we're doing things. You know, we're no longer in these big boardrooms or in these fancy conferencing facilities. So I thought that would be a fun thing to do just as we kick off. So if you could do that, that would be great. We'll have a look at what content has come out of that. I think the most important thing that we really want to emphasize today is something that Jan's already touched on, and that is the importance of social media. And I think social, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people were still asking questions around, is it a fad? Is it something that's powerful? Is it something that we should be paying attention to? And I think those kind of questions have been dealt with over the last couple of years. And so what I'm going to do is take you through some of the key things that we've learned and we've recognized. And hopefully you'll be able to pick up a few things that you can apply to your social media strategy, to your marketing, and to your advertising. So I think I want to just kind of emphasize a few things as we go. One of the most important things that I think we can all agree on is that there's certain times in history where we'll never, ever forget. And I think this is one of those times. I think the tourism and travel industry was rocked, and so many things changed as a result of 9/11. And we've had tsunamis, and we've had all these other things, you know, natural disasters and terrible terrorist attacks and things that have happened in the past. And I think those things, they're so big, we can go back to that very moment. We can remember exactly what we were doing, where we were when we first kind of discovered what was going on when it comes to 9/11. And I think the important thing for us also is just to recognize that where we are today is that, you know, everything has changed. Everything has changed in terms of what we've now kind of come across through this whole pandemic around the world. Where before everything was about safety and security and really being able to deal with the terrorism threat, now we're dealing with something that is so difficult to find, so difficult to manage, and so difficult to deal with because it's microscopic, and it's got to do with the fabric of people and how we engage and what we've done and how we live and how we move. And it's an important thing for us to recognize that we've never really seen such a big disruption, such a big change to the global stage as what we are now experiencing and what we now need to face. I think our lives have suddenly shifted from important numbers like arrivals and engagement scores to, you know, infection rates and death rates. And I think it's really kind of heartbreaking to see the numbers and what those numbers mean. And I don't think we really truly appreciate it until those numbers impact us and they start to touch our circle of friends and our families and the people who are close to us. And I think that's one of the big things that this whole pandemic has taught us, is that there's so many things going on around the world, but it has a very granular, very real effect on us as people for the first time. It was always easy to kind of see things happening far away. And I think the things that we've paid attention to at SA Tourism when we were dealing with things like the Ebola outbreak, when we were dealing with things like xenophobic attacks, you know, tsunamis, those were things that were kind of happening elsewhere. But now for the first time, we really are having to face things that have a real impact on us as people in our direct communities, in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces. And I think that's such an important thing for us just to recognize and to pay attention to just for a moment. I also think it's important just to recognize that, I want to show you what this looks like. There've really been big changes in the world that we live in. And I think tourism is one of the places where we're really kind of paying attention to how that's going to have to be rethought and how it needs to be reimagined. And those experiences that we've seen before, where everything was about more and more and more, you know, more arrivals, more daily spend, more people to come to our destinations. How do we reach more people? How do we get more people to come? I think it's really kind of gotten us to the place where we're starting to realize that the numbers are starting to have different meaning to us because of what we've had to now kind of encounter and face. I think the one point that John made earlier was that, you know, social media has really skyrocketed because of the fact that people have now been forced to pay attention to things differently. They don't have the ability to do what they've always had to do. And so now they're reaching for their mobile phones. And also, just to echo what Jan was saying, it's such an important thing to understand the difference between social distancing and what social media is actually able to offer. And I think we really had to take this whole message to stay at home seriously. And people have responded very differently to that. And if you look at what education providers have done, if you pay attention to what some brands are doing, and you also pay attention to our particular space in hospitality, everyone is responding to this in a very different way. So we have to really look at what those shifts are and understand what the impacts are, not on us not just on us as a business, but also really what those impacts are on consumers. And that's really, really interesting when you start to see how government have embraced social media to be able to start using that as a key communications mechanism. You know, social media is what gets into everyone's hands and into everyone's homes, where you can't rely on things like newspapers, or you can't rely on things like outdoor and billboard advertising. It's really that direct access to people's hands and to their hearts, and the information we've seen being shared now has been far more kind of comprehensive and detailed than we've ever had before. And to the point where people were even coming down on false and fake news that was being used in, WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups. It's really kind of put the focus on who's communicating what, how they're communicating, and where that information finds itself. So I think for us to shift our attention from the old days where we were paying attention to media channels that were established to this whole new way of doing things from a social media perspective, also just really kind of underscores the importance and the power of social media today more than ever before. And I think we're all on this webinar and we're listening to these speakers talk about how important this whole thing is for us as the tourism and hospitality space, because it really has hit us hard. I think if you look at retail, if you look at the small businesses in the coffee space, in cafes, etc., these are the guys who no longer can carry on waiting for things to change, because they've never had the opportunity to build that kind of backbone, that robust business plan to be able to ever ask the question, well, what do we do if we had to, switch off or not come into the office for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks? And this is really where it's really making an impact on us today, is to see that there are businesses that are now no longer in business because of what's been going on. And so for us, we're looking at it and we're starting to see, well, you've got to look beyond the business. You've got to start to make those connections with the people. You've got to start to make those connections with the community, because things in terms of job losses are massive. Things because of how we change what we do and how we do it is going to be something that we all really need to pay careful attention to. The other thing that's important to remember is that tourism is social. And, as Jan was saying, it's always on. It's always there. It's dynamic. It happens on your mobile device. It's something that you are spending so much time on, and more time now than ever before. And we're looking for information. We're looking for inspiration, and we're looking to be able to plan things and do things in the future when we come out of lockdown. And that's why this is such an important opportunity for us, not to shy away from how we use social media, but to start really kind of leaning into it and learning how we could use it better to be able to influence and share information and get people inspired again. People really do want to escape, as Jan was saying. They want to escape the confines of their homes, and they want to be able to start to dream what it is they're going to be doing and where it is they're going to be going and who it is they're going to be doing that with later on. The other key thing for us to remember is that tourism is going to recover. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a huge amount of effort, and there's going to be a lot of information and a lot of collaboration that's required. There's going to be a lot of doing things differently that's required. There's going to be people that are going to have to come up with great new ideas that they've never thought of before to be able to make it through this difficult time. And there are going to be people that are going to need to shut their doors and maybe later on have the opportunity to open them up again. And that's really what we're paying attention to. We want to be in a position where we can actually do what needs to be done now and not wait for everyone to do it for us. And I think that's a really key thing for us in our conversations that we've had with the travel industry in the last couple of days, is that there's a lot of despondency. There's a lot of blame game stuff happening on. There's a lot of people saying that we should be doing, putting a lot more pressure on institutes and governments, etc. But what I'd like us to do is really kind of pay attention to what it is we can do together. Focus there and build on that, because when we start to build those things without waiting for other people, we start to build things the way that we need it to work, not the way that it needs to be policy driven or the way that it needs to be bureaucratized. So I think the opportunity for us to rethink things really is now. We really do need to ask different questions. We really do need to decide what the outcomes need to be. How are they different to what we had before? So if we take a step back and say everything was about more of this, more of this, more of that, what's more important to us now? And there have been some really good inspirational things that I've come across, which I thought was amazing. If you look at one of these posts from the Hack Tourism Facebook page, these scuba divers, they were all about scuba diving. And what they've started to shift to do now is to actually start replanting and recolonizing those reefs. And that's an interesting thing for me, because I think ultimately how we respond now, the actions we take now, the connections we make now with people as opposed to driving profit is going to be what we are going to be remembered for. And in years to come, that's going to be something we're going to look back on and ask ourselves, how could we have responded differently? So really what I want us to be able to take out of the session now is, what are those key things that we find that are practical, that we've seen in the recipe of success come up over and over and over again? I want to share some of those with you. And hopefully by the end of my session, as we go into Lizzy's session, which is going to be a lot more practical in terms of how do you actually create content? How do you actually make sure that you're paying attention to the right kind of buckets? How do you concentrate about themes? How do you convert those things? I really want to pay attention to why it's so important for you to actually have a social media strategy to start off with. So a strategy is actually a pretty simple thing, and it needs to be simple. You don't want to be confused by lots of information, lots of people, lots of opinions. You really need to find a solution that works well for you and your business. And that really needs to be the sophistication of simplicity. So what do I mean by that? Actually, you've got certain things that are working well for you, and you've got other things that you kind of like not sure whether you should try or not. The strategy really is going to be something that from a social media point of view, you pull together to decide what are you going to do that will benefit your business. How will your use of social drive your business objectives, and how will it actually change what people think and do for your organization? That's really what I'd like you to really think about when we talk about a social media strategy. It needs to be something that anyone can pick up and anyone can understand. And it usually starts with asking yourself those questions. What's working? What are people saying? How can I learn to be able to incorporate what they are telling me about what it is that stood out for them when they came to our establishment or our experience, and start to weave that back into your marketing and into your communications plans. So it needs to be something that can guide you. It's not very prescriptive in it needs to do this, it needs to do that, it needs to do the next thing, because the strategy needs to be flexible enough so that when new technologies come in or new ways of doing things come in, that it doesn't mean that you have to go back and change your strategy all of the time. So find it to be simple, seek out the insights and the information from the people who've already used what you have to offer, who have already come and have already experienced. Listen to what they have to say, because those are going to be valuable things to help you shape your strategy. So one of the key things for us right now in the social media space is that, like Jan was saying, people are dreaming. They're trying to escape. And dreaming and the strategy around understanding that dream phase that people are in from a tourism planning process is to understand that your language when you're talking about dreaming to go somewhere is going to be different. And this is something that we've had to say to tourism people over and over and over again. When I ask you to describe to me what it is you have to offer, and you start off by saying, oh, well, we're a bed and breakfast, we have 15 rooms, it's luxury. That's not the dream kind of conversation that I'm talking about. We really want people to focus on experience. We want you to be able to close your eyes and to be able to use words to paint a picture of what that experience is going to be. So your strategy needs to inform how you do that and really keep you honest in terms of what you do and how you do it. Now I'm going to move on and just kind of like elaborate on that a little bit further in the coming slides. Jan also spoke about the fact that data is so important. Data really is the thing that we use at SA Tourism to help us navigate all the different opinions. So people in travel and tourism will tell you a lot of things based on their feelings, based on their gut feel, based on what they believe is right or wrong. But data is the type of thing that we can always go back and measure to see what actually is going on there. So in social, on online and digital, everything is measurable. Every single thing is measurable. Every single post that you create, you can see how many people have liked it. You can see how many people have seen it. You can see how many people share and engage with that content. So we really have the opportunity now as marketers to really kind of like take the social media thing and see it as our superpower. We really have a superpower when it comes to social media and online marketing because of the data that informs everything that we do and what wins and what loses. So it's important for us to actually see that as a tool in our marketing to be able to guide what we do and how we do it. So for many of us, we'll kind of ask the question, well, how do we know if something's working or not? If you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Pinterest or your website, the numbers that start to come through from those platforms should make it easy for you to get a sense of what's working or what's not working. And where you do struggle, we're happy to help you to interpret that information. But for the most part, those platforms are built specifically with those data points there and available for you to be able to see what it is that's working and how you can do more of those things that are working. Important also to understand that data will tell you how you need to apply those calls to action. So a call to action is basically something that you need to think hard about. When I create content, what do I want people to do after they've seen this or read this? Do I want them to comment? Do I want them to share it with their friends? Or do I want them to look for more information on the website? How do I do that? Because if I don't think about that from a data-driven perspective, I'm not going to be able to drive those kind of behaviors. So those are some of the things that we've seen people get wrong in the past and why it's important for us to highlight it here today. You also need to figure out what your plan is, right? So a plan without, strategy without a plan gives you no way of structuring what you're going to do or how you need to do it. So that's vitally important for us as well. So if you look at some of the plans that are starting to come through, it's very easy to recognize when people have a plan, right? You can see that every action that they take is well thought out. It's not spur of the moment. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's something that they actually thought clearly about. They've planned it out. And the plan, which Lizzie will talk about later, includes things like what content you post, how frequently you post that content. Those are the things that we really like to be able to share with people. Start with a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you're going to be planning to fail. Your content plans can be quite simple, or they can be massively complicated. We like simple. Start with those baby steps. When you start to see that your audience is engaging more with you on a Tuesday or a Thursday, based on the data that you've got from your platforms, you can start to see what kind of content they like. Is it video? Is it image? Is it just long format words posted? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And then you bring that into your plan. And your plan can also include things like public holidays. It can include things like World Tourism Day. It can include things like massive celebrations around the world, like today, for instance. And if you didn't know, today is International Star Wars Day. So shameless punt. Those plans are going to be the things that help you differentiate yourself also between what you are doing and your competitors, and how you can actually be consistent in the way that you do all of your communication going forward. So if you don't plan, that's going to be one of the first things we're going to try and help you do better. Most important thing that we've heard around the comments that Jan was making for Cape Town is that they've got a really good way of telling their story. And I like to just kind of like highlight one of these stories, because what we tend to do is we forget that people tell stories about us all of the time. And we very seldom pay attention to the stories that guests are telling their friends around their experiences at your establishment, or after having an experience in your restaurant or the accommodation or conferencing experience. And storytelling is a really, really significant art in our game. And you need to get the right stories out there, told and retold to the different audiences, because stories resonate with people. And this is one of the big differences between brand and destination marketing. When people share stories, they make connections. Brands struggle to do that. When I talk about the experiences that I've had in travel, and I start to describe to you where I was, what those sensations and emotions were that I was feeling during that time at that place with those people, there starts to be a much bigger, deeper connection in me telling that story. And me telling that story in my own words is such an important thing as well. And we'll talk about that in the Meet South Africa campaign and what were the key learnings there. But what I'd like to show you very quickly is just one of those really good examples that I found. And I reference lots of examples on the Hack Tourism Facebook page and other places. But this is something that I'd like to just give you a little bit of a quick taster of.
The farm dates back to 1692, when it was first established as a wine farm, but it goes way back before that. Spear has this extraordinary history. When I walk the farm, I find all these Stone Age tools. When you hold them, they actually fit your hands. For me, Spear is a place of excellence around food, wine, and art. It's amazing being part of a group of people that are so passionate about what they do. Angus is passionate about farming and the land. You know, he just loves it. France is an internationally acclaimed winemaker. People come from all around the world to taste our wines. And right from the beginning, because of my father's influence, we've always been supportive of South African arts. You know, in the world, we've become quite industrialized, from our education to our food system. And what we're trying to do at Spear is to really integrate the different parts of the farm. So the way we farm is really trying to treat the farm as an organism. And this idea that in nature there is no such thing as waste. 95% of the waste that we generate at Spear is recycled. All our wastewater goes to the treatment site, which then eventually ends up back as irrigation water onto our pastures. All our organic waste matter gets composted at the compost site. We're very aware of the impact we have on our environment. We don't like to make short-term decisions because we're going to be here for a long time. We look to involve ourselves in community and environmental projects that illustrate that long-term thinking. We want people to leave feeling rested and at peace. We would like Spear to be a place of inspiration. It's been incredibly rewarding living on Spear. You can see how it all fits together, and we really want to share that.
So to me, the beautiful thing there is that we're suddenly starting to see something very differently. We know about the place, we've heard about the place, we may have even attended a conference or gone for a couple of days or done day trips to the place, but now suddenly the place has an entirely different feel to it. I've learned more about it, and I've been taught, and this information has been shared in a way that's creative and it's inspiring and it's stimulating and it's beautiful. And now for the first time, I'm starting to think differently about it. And that's the real skill that storytelling from an expert allows the consumer of that information to actually experience. And that's why I thought this was such an important thing to mention. So when we were at SA Tourism, we realized that after the Soccer World Cup, the big thing that we needed to do was try and help people understand that there was a lot more that happens when you come to South Africa than just seeing Table Mountain, going into the winelands, or doing Vilakazi Street in Soweto. We started to realize that the research was telling us everything had to do with how people were experiencing the South African people. Before they spoke about any of these other major iconic tourism experiences, they talked about how heartwarming the people, how welcoming the people, how beautiful the people were. And that's where that whole Leave Ordinary Behind campaign started. And we started to see that it needed to be something that we could connect far more using the emotion and using the words of those storytellers. And that's what birthed the Meet South Africa campaign. And it was really challenging for us because you start to go into a place where you are now letting go of your script. You're now letting go of what's important for you as a brand, for you as a destination to start telling people, and you're giving them the microphone, you're giving them the video camera, and you're telling them, you tell us about your South African experience. And when they start telling us about their South African experience and they start sharing that content and that information with their users and their groups and their followers, suddenly you have to let go of what you think is important, and you have to step back and allow them to talk about the story that they experience and how they experience it because of the place and the people and the experiences that you were able to craft and give to them. So that was a big deal, right? So storytelling for us in this space becomes absolutely paramount. It is absolutely critical. So how do we do this from a very practical way? How do we mix in the secret sauce? I think the easiest way for us to start showing you how do you do this is to actually start giving you a few tips and tricks. And that really starts with things like the tools that we need to be able to use. Many of us don't have access to big budgets or big marketing campaigns or advertising agencies or even PR or social media agencies. We have to take on the opportunity to do this communication job better and use and learn to use these tools that are available now more than ever before, that we can actually start empowering ourselves. So one of the things that we like to recommend is Canva as a tool. So Canva is an online browser-based technology that gives you design tools and templates that you can very quickly use your imagery, put your brand fonts and treatments and things into it, and start to create some really gorgeous images, presentations, posts. There's a myriad of things that you can learn from there. And they also have a really great design school so that people who really don't know how to design can start to design things. And I think this is time much better spent than coming up with, all these ridiculous challenges of swallowing eggs and all the rest of it that we've seen going on. So I encourage you, take a look at canva.com, some really great content that you can look at there. We also love to use Hootsuite because Hootsuite is one of those applications, also browser-based, that you can use on your desktop, on your laptop, on your tablet, and on your mobile phone to help you manage your social media streams, your content, your publishing, your content plans. It all comes together with Hootsuite. And Hootsuite has got a great set of solutions that are available for free, doesn't cost you anything, that you can start managing what the reputation scores are, basic analytics, post to all of the different platforms at the same time, consolidate all of your streams into one place. Really powerful suite of tools there. We also really like the way that Hootsuite allows you to schedule your posts. So what you can do is you can make sure that you're scheduling on a Monday morning all the tweets and all the Facebook posts for the week coming. You can work on your content plan that talks about these are the themes that we want to be able to emphasize. And you can actually start to see those content plans coming together in a way that's actually easy to manage and to share. So you can have multiple people using the same platform. An important tool that people sometimes overlook is just what is trending on Twitter. And when you start to understand the conversations that are taking place on Twitter, you can very quickly see how you can bring your brand or your messaging in to actually start to hijack some of those conversations. And if you don't know how that works, all you need to do is to get some trend analysis tools, and again, Hootsuite can help you to actually start to show you what the conversations are that are taking place online and how it is that you can start segueing your content into those conversations. It's a really great way for you to start reaching audiences that you haven't actually paid for and that you don't actually directly have communication lines with. We also love Instagram. Instagram from an inspiration point of view and travel point of view are absolutely phenomenal. And when you start using Instagram, not only for your brand, you may get to a place where you feel like you're much better suited on Facebook or much better suited on Pinterest, or you're doing a much better job on Instagram to promote your destination. It's a great way for you to see what other platforms and what other competitors are doing as well. And it's also interesting to learn how they take content from Instagram and start to use it into other spaces as well. So use Instagram to get comfortable with the platform. Use Instagram to see what other destinations, other experience providers are doing in the same space as well. The important thing about Facebook and Instagram and even WhatsApp is that is where your audiences are. You will find your audiences there. So if you aren't there, they'll never get to consider you. They'll never even come across you on their feeds. So pay attention to where those audiences are and why it is you want to be in those particular channels. YouTube for me is one of the most amazing platforms to get travel content and to be able to start to use one of those tricks that we'll talk about next, which is how do you decide when you're creating content as opposed to when you're curating content. And YouTube is going to give you a huge amount of information. So if I was in Stellenbosch and I was a bed and breakfast, I could start to use YouTube content that other people have created and I can start sharing that on my Facebook profile, talking about Stellenbosch and what Stellenbosch has to offer. And suddenly you're starting to leverage other people's content, sharing it, and not taking it out as your own, because there's obviously intellectual property rights around that, but sharing that content in a way that it becomes informative and inspirational. And that's the curation job that you can do very smartly using these different channels. Other tools, you've heard me talk about Hootsuite, but there's a lot of really valuable functionality and utility that's tucked away in Facebook and also in Twitter that most people are not utilizing. So if your website is built on any kind of technology, whether it's Wix or whether it's WordPress or any of the other platforms, the analysis side of things, coming back to the importance of data, is absolutely critical. What is it that people are consuming and being exposed to that are driving to their website or to your Facebook page or to your Twitter handles? What are people doing and why is that so important? If you don't understand those things, you're going to be losing out. And these are some of the tools that we like to use and to recommend to be able to help people to understand those things better. MailChimp is one of the easiest and most convenient ways for us to create email campaigns and to actually manage email databases. And I think one of the things that we'd like to be able to recommend to a lot of the establishments today is to go back to those very forgotten places in your establishment. Email marketing. Now is a perfect time for you to start thinking about how it is you could be emailing those past guests, how it is you could start building better relationships with your guests who visited you before, and how can you try and get top of mind with them using email, using social, and using digital marketing. I think email is a very underrated channel that most people kind of like shrug aside, but it is an extremely important channel for us to pay attention to. MailChimp are one of those tools that we like to use when it comes to email marketing campaigns. Another key thing that people forget when it comes to posting social media content, the number of characters become a real restriction. And what I love to recommend is Bitly, because Bitly shortens URLs and it gives you really insightful information around how often that URL is being used, how many times it's being clicked, which platforms are actually driving content through that shortened URL. And most importantly, it brings down the number of characters that you need to be able to manage in a tweet or in a Facebook post dramatically. And it makes it much easier for you to manage those short URLs than these long URLs that no one can ever really understand or ever work with. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't pay attention to how all of these things work in the palm of your hand from a WhatsApp perspective. So WhatsApp is one of those key platforms that you also need to start considering as part of your social media mix that a lot of people don't get. The most important thing for us today is also just to recognize that, as Jan was saying, this is like kind of uncharted territory for us. And I know that for you, many of you are not familiar with social media. You feel like overwhelmed by everything that's going on. It's the young people who know what's going on. I should just get out of the way. I think the most important thing for us to really embrace here is the fact that we are able to learn from our mistakes. And it's going to be the best kind of learning for us. It has been the best learning for us all of our lives is around making mistakes and how we learn from it. Social media is an easy place for us to try things, and digital allows us to try things, and then when they work, we can scale them up. When they don't work, we can move on and just basically apply different thinking going forward. So I want to encourage you to really kind of like open your hearts and minds to how social media can teach us all how we could be doing things differently and how we could win, only if you have the mindset of, mistakes aren't fatal. So 2 things that I'd like to highlight on this slide is just the work that the guys from Virtual Travel SA are doing and also what Cape Town Tourism are doing. They're creating some really engaging content, stuff that makes you want to get off your couch and go. And at the same time, they've got the right mix of getting the inspirational content with the right amount of information. And they're also doing a really good job of connecting that to a location. So it doesn't help that I'm seeing this amazing inspirational piece of content. I want to go, but I don't have a clue as to where it is or how it is I can plan to get there and how it is that I can get into that kind of experience. So remember that your content needs to be powerful. It needs to stop the scroll. It needs to be attention grabbing, and it has to have the right mix of inspiration, information, and location. So those are key things that we have to say to people over and over again, because very often it's just, well, I'm not really into the social media thing. I don't really understand it. Someone else is doing it for me. I just want to let you know that that's no longer going to be an excuse for you or your establishment to be able to go on. You need to become familiar, you need to become engaged, and you need to start using those platforms.
William.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We are looking at a bit of a time constraint, young man. So how are we doing for, can we wrap it up a little bit quickly, please?
Yes, we can. So the last thing I wanted to show was just the fact that we're trying to make this very practical, and we're going to give people those handbooks that we spoke about, something practical for you to use, something for you to be able to take on this journey with you as we go through these different webinars. And it's going to be something that you can then scribble down and make your own for your actual playbook for your business. And really just to encourage you to then join us again on those other different platforms. It's not just going to be webinars that we're trying to get people to engage with. It's also going to be the social media posts, the groups, the interest groups, and also Zoom calls that we're planning to do with people in the industry. And you can plan for these different dates that are coming up. And that's really exciting for us to be able to see what it is the industry is asking for and how we can respond to that. Because that's really important for us to get collaboration. And John, that's it.
Thank you, William. Sorry, I think there was a bit of feedback there from Lizzy's side. But that was an amazing presentation, William. And I'm sorry I had to rush you there towards the end. But obviously, we are wanting to get some of the content in from Lizzy, because that's also one of the reasons why everybody's here today. So they want to learn how to do all of this amazing, magical stuff that you've been telling us about themselves online. So we're going to now move right over without any further ado to Lizzy. So let me tell you a little about Lizzy. She's climbing out of her rabbit hole. Yes, no, she is not the Easter Bunny, but she definitely is a little rabbit. Lizzy van NIEKERK has been managing social media since she stumbled into her first community manager position in 2012, taking to it like a fish to water. Lizzy quickly developed her own style of brand management, helping large corporations to connect with their customers as humans and not targets. From humble beginnings as a junior community manager at Quirk, Lizzy's natural talents had her assigned to key brands such as Seacom, South African Breweries, and Durex South Africa. Her trail continued to blaze as she progressed to the Creative Council, Poppy Media Group, working on accounts such as Nescafe Dolce Gusto and MTN Afghanistan, and then onto the Avatar digital agency, where she was instrumental in launching Caltech's Tektron across multiple cities and managed her biggest communities yet for South African Airways, National Geographic Africa, and of course, Brand South Africa. One of the many feathers in Lizzy's cap includes her amazing ability to build self-sustaining communities on social media. One of her biggest achievements to date includes doing this for over 2 years for the Fox Africa brand around their flagship shows. These communities competed for Twitter trends alongside the PSL and organically featured above them in the top 5 for 6 weeks in a row. All this by applying her tried and tested engagement strategies. Lizzy now runs her own menu-style mini agency called The Little Rabbit Digital, where she brings the wisdom of large-scale agencies to SMMEs, helping small businesses to exceed their own expectations through professionalized marketing and seamless community management. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand by and welcome Lizzy van NIEKERK. Hey, Lizzy.
John. That was a really nice intro.
Welcome and good morning.
I'm going to jump into it.
Lizzy, you've got a bit of feedback here. I don't know if you've got something with our sound on. We're getting some feedback.
You need to mute your mic, John.
I'm trying to see. Sorry, folks. Lizzy, there seems to be some feedback on your side. I don't know if there's something that you've got on your mobile phone or something like that. Let's try again. Okay, that looks better. That sounds better. Great. Sorry about that, folks. Obviously, as I said, technology works wonders when it works, but when it goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. But hopefully we're back to normal again. Lizzy, if I could ask you to share your screen, please, so that we can begin with your presentation. We've got terrible feedback issues. Terrible feedback issues. Okay, there Lizzie's sharing her screen. Right. Putting her mic back on. Right, Lizzie, there you go.
Great. If you can mute on your side, we should avoid the feedback. I'm going to make this easy and plug in my headphones.
Definitely feedback coming in from there on Lizzie's side. Using her headphones and see if it works out better.
All right, so let's get into it. I am Lizzie from Little Rabbit Digital. The reason for the Little Rabbits, a lot of people ask me, is because I see SMEs as the little rabbits. They are tenacious, they go after what they want, and they're just generally very happy. The hopeless optimist in me really loves rabbits. So, and you'll see later in my presentation, I'm a bit of a Disney nerd as well. So this is me. I've worked, as John said, I've sold everything from condoms to couches and everything in between you can think of. So some of the travel brands that you might not even recognize in this is things like Sanral and Caltex and obviously SAA. So, sorry, John, there seems to be feedback in my... This helps.
Sorry, Lizzie, I'm not sure. Maybe your speakers are, your headphones are connected. The sound is very bad.
Hearing myself even in my headphones.
Yeah, I'm hearing that. I'll tell you. Can you maybe move your headphones? I don't know if they're still plugged in or something like that, because we're still getting a lot of... We did all the tests before this, and it worked perfectly. And as I said, technology is a very strange thing. Lizzie, let's try that again, please.
All right, see if you mute your mic, if that takes the double voice out of my head. You're muted. Still have the double voice in my head. Okay, I'm just going to power through. If everybody can just tell me if they can hear me fine, there's no feedback, then I'll just ignore the voice in my head. So it'll be a regular day. Okay, great, let's go. Luckily, I talk very fast, so I'll get through my deck and you won't miss out on anything. Okay, great. So this is a bit of my background, but the reason why I'm here and why I'm talking to you is because COVID really hit home for me. I grew up in Polokwane, which is 2 hours from the Kruger Park gates. And this is my little family. That's my dad, my sister, and my brother. So my dad and my brother are freelance field rangers in the Kruger National Park and currently without any form of income. So the tourism industry hit home for me as well. I'm trying to help them just stay alive at this stage. So let's go through the presentation. This is my details. You can get in touch. I love connecting with people. I love talking to you about how I can help you through content and through your social pages and just your digital presence in general. So why are people socially distant? Working with small businesses, I have realized that people get overwhelmed really quickly when it comes to their own social. They feel like they need to be everywhere and talk all the time, which is absolutely not the case. If you're going to try and manage 5 different social platforms for your brand with a post every single day, you are going to get overwhelmed. Everything's going to feel too much and the wheels are going to start coming off. So we love telling stories as people, but as soon as we start talking about our brands, we turn into robots. I can promise you now that blonde is not telling that guy about how comfortable her shoes are. She's telling him that she found them in this amazing little Moroccan town, a stall right off of the main roads, and the story about how she bartered with a guy who had a beard down to his knees. Those are the stories we're telling at parties, but we're not telling them as brands and as businesses. Yet we're people. So it's something that I've come to call natural habitat marketing. Natural habitat marketing needs to speak to how you speak to your consumers and how you act in a certain environment. I am not going to sell makeup on LinkedIn, yet you find people trying to fit their brand into various platforms where they don't belong. John loves this analogy when I say, when we spot, as marketers, when we spot brands on platforms that they're not supposed to be at, it's as embarrassing as seeing your dad do the Macarena at your 21st. You don't want that, and you don't want other people looking at your brand like that. So you need to blend into the environment effortlessly and respect the surroundings and respect what they're there for. I'm not going to go to a funeral and talk about the latest Mamma Mia movie. You need to understand what the people are doing in that area and on that platform and communicate in that way to actually just blend into it. So how we do that is the basics. It's the who, where, and what of marketing. Who are we talking to? Where are they? What do we want to tell them? But then the one thing we keep missing is, will they do what we want them to? We often don't tell people what we want them to do with our content, and then we get upset that they don't engage with it. So as I said, I'm a really big Disney nerd, and my favorite one is The Little Mermaid, because I ground so much of my marketing analogies in The Little Mermaid. So Ariel, we all know the song. Ariel wants to be where the people are, and she want to see them dancing. But then she pitches up and she combs her hair with a fork. And people are like, what are you doing? So whenever you're in an environment and it feels like you're busy combing your hair with a fork, you're not supposed to be there. Walk away. There's no shame in closing social media platforms that you're not supposed to be on. If Twitter is not giving you any results, don't feel like you need to be there to make a difference. You're actually doing more damage to your brand by staying on platforms that you're not supposed to be on. So let's see who they are and where they are. Demographic identification is as important and will inform your platform identification. Lucky for you, and as William said, all these platforms tell you exactly who's on. So go into your Facebook analytics, go into your Twitter analytics. Instagram has analytics. If you use Hootsuite, it'll also tell you exactly who your people are. Facebook also tells you who your content is actually reaching and who your content is actually engaging. If you realize that you have a product that you are trying to sell to families, but the majority of your demographic on Facebook is between 18 and 25, those aren't really families. Move and shift your communication to the younger market instead of trying to market to families. If you don't understand who you are selling to and where they are, you might as well be trying to sell sand in Dubai. It's not going to work. So platform identification comes from knowing who you're trying to target. Don't follow the herd. Just because everybody now has a TikTok account, you don't need a TikTok account. I don't see the need for the tourism brands to be on TikTok right now. It's still very uncharted territory for a lot of us. So focus on the platforms that you need to be on. Personally, for a travel brand, I would stick to Facebook and Instagram and really zone in and focus on how you can do those two. The reason for it is it just offers you so many creative possibilities with executions. You can do beautiful carousels. If you have a mountain lodge, you can do a 360 that immerses people in that moment, where you can't really get that on the other platforms. Twitter is a very conversational platform. If you feel like you're nailing Instagram and Facebook, venture into Twitter purely because of the conversations you can pick up there. So once we get there, we know what we're talking to. What do we say? Remember, it's very simple, and it's going back to that natural habitat marketing. Content is a conversation. Conversations are connections, Connections are emotions, and emotions instill loyalty. If you can hit content that evokes an emotion, connects a loyalty to your brand, you're winning. You're having conversations with your people, and you're not just pushing content out. You are connecting and not just projecting. So because I really miss football, I decided to put a little football pun. If you follow all of these, your content will be anything but messy. And now you're going to remember the slide. So my infamous 4 R's of content, and I put this little picture up because every single person who's ever worked in a team with me used to give me this face when I asked them where my 4 R's are when they do content. So the 4 R's of content, it needs to be relevant, reliable, relatable, and real. Relevance connects you to the situation. Reliable establishes authority. Relatable connects the content to me. And real connects me back to the brand. If you can hit as many of these 4 R's in your content pieces as possible, you'll win. So I recently had a run-in, pardon the pun, with Adidas on Twitter, where they were hitting none of the 4 R's. So I just tweeted them after seeing this ad promoting running, and I said, listen guys, much like us, this is not supposed to be running now. They actually came back to me and they didn't really understand why I was upset. And what bugged me was the fact that I had to explain to a big brand how they were being silly. This ad went out on the 13th of March. Now, a lot of people in SA know that we were already on social distancing then. And I picked it up on the 23rd of April when we were in hard lockdown. Me as a runner, I have been missing the open road. I've been missing my treadmill, and seeing an ad like this actually just agitated me. What I would have done in this scenario is I would have hit the real and the relevant R's. I just lost my words there. I would have hit the real and the relevant. I would really connect with people on an emotional aspect and say, listen, we know you're aching to get back to the road. Here are a few tips on how you can stay run fit at home. A lot of people are running around their houses and they're sharing those little heat maps that go around a circle. Ask them to share those. Ask them to run in little patterns and share, like connect to the people like that. And don't remind us that we actually can't go for a run. So hitting none of the 4 R's and what they could have done. In your content, it's always very important to know and to remember to keep it simple. This is one of my favorite examples to use. It's a clip from Indiana Jones. So this was supposed to be a massive, elaborate 4.5-minute sword fight between Indy and this guy with his black dress. Unfortunately, Harrison Ford had food poisoning on the day, and the entire 4.5 minutes got condensed to that. Much more powerful, much more impactful. And there's always a simpler way to do it. Your execution doesn't have to have a million bells and whistles on it. In and out, there's something so beautiful in simplicity. I often catch myself thinking, oh no, it's too simple. But there's such a beauty in simplicity. And I've had so many people tell me, just come back. It doesn't need to be this big thing. So with the content and with all of this, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. So just giving a nod back to my dad, this is one of the pictures that he took on his way into the Kruger Park recently. So whenever I get really overwhelmed and in my head about something, I would sit down and say, Daddy, like, I can't. And he'd tell me, how do you eat an elephant? Piece by piece, bite by bite. And that's all you do with your content. So I want to show you very practical, quick tips on how you can actually just eat this elephant that is your digital presence and that is your social content. So the first thing we do is we condense it into pillars. We just need to focus our efforts into content pillars. I have worked on a few kind of general content pillars that you can use within your company just to help you. The first one is utility, because being nice is free. And also scrolling through social feeds and actually getting some value out of content is going to connect with me a lot more. It's going to connect with my relevant and reliable and relatable content pillars. So give away some cream and make them pay for the coffee later. Tell them how to pack, what the best routes are for a road trip down to Cape Town, the scenic route, not the N2. I have discovered some of the most beautiful places just by getting off the highway and getting off the main roads. So give them that advice and help them with some practical tips that you can do now. Engagement, absolutely, engagement is always a content pillar on all of my strategies. So have some fun with your community. Scrolling through endless streams of very negative content, especially now, we need something to break that. We need something to just take our minds off it. It's a word search game. It's a guess the animal, but not the very weird guess the animals that's been going around on Twitter lately. Like proper, really cool, fun, and engaging content. Then product. What are you actually selling? But break your product down into exactly what it is. It's not just accommodation. It's a room overlooking the most beautiful, tranquil setting you've ever seen in your life. It's the perfect opportunity to escape. It's a four-wheeler company in the mountains. You're selling an adventure. You're selling the perfect opportunity to propose. So find those moments, and that is your product. Your product is not the 2-bedroom cabin you have in the mountains. The product is a breakaway after you've been stuck. I know the first thing I'm doing is I'm running away to the mountains. There's this beautiful place in Magubas that is calling my name, and I'm going there for a week when the gates open up again, because it's that tranquility that I'm looking for. It's waking up and smelling the pine trees, hearing the animals and the birds at night. It's sell that. That is your product. It's not the cabin in the woods. Find your unique selling point. Yes, you have an accommodation next to the ocean, but what makes yours better than the guy next to you? I went to Gansbaai a few years ago, and the guest house was very nice. But what I loved about it is I could lie on my bed at night and hear the whales come into the harbor. And that to me should have been what sold the guest house, and not the fact that it had a nice view. So find exactly what makes you different and what kind of adventure and feeling you can sell, and not just a 2-bedroom breakaway. There's so many creative ways to sell accommodation. So your second bite is your buckets. When I was working at the Creative Council, I was in charge of 5 brands. This was before we cut down on content, and we realized that posting less is actually a lot better. So back then I was creating 30 content pieces per brand every month. 5 brands, 2 platforms. That is 60 content pieces per brand times 5. 300 content pieces I had to write in 1 week. So I came up with the buckets because it was just insane. And I did that. So the buckets, getting on and off a train of thought is a massive waste of time. So once you have your pillars and once you know what you want to write about, put them in little buckets. Sit down and say, I am going to write about my jacuzzi. And write as many content pieces as you can about this jacuzzi and different options. Have an engagement option, have a beautiful photo option, and then finish off your jacuzzi bucket. And then move on to the next one. The next one can be the food on your menu. And unpack it as detailed as you want, but keep it short. As soon as your post feels like it's too long, it's supposed to be 2 posts. And fill that bucket as much as you can. So filling up these different theme buckets, you get a tiny drizzle that goes into your content plan. And these buckets you can fill. If you think of more posts about your jacuzzi, go back and fill the jacuzzi bucket. But to start with, just think in your buckets and fill it to as much as you can. And then from there, pull it into a content plan. It's like, okay, cool, Lizzie, content plan, that's great. What is that? A content plan you can build on Google Drive. So it's a very simple Excel sheet that shows the date, the content pillar, the platform, and the copy that you want to put out, and the image. It's one simple sheet that shows exactly what's going to happen. It gives you an overview of the month. You can fill this content plan as far ahead as you want. But Google Sheets, everybody who's worked with me knows that I have this fear of getting hit by a bus and then I'm gone. So I live and die by my Google Sheets, because if anything happens to me, my entire work history is on Google Sheets, and you can sit down and take over where I left off. So Google Sheets, because it's one document, one sheet, it looks exactly like your Excel. It looks exactly like your Word, your PowerPoint. It's very familiar. It's just live and interactive. We can have 4 different people work on one sheet at the same time. You can work offline and you can sync it. I often prefer to write content out in the garden, and I'll go sit out under a tree and I'll write, and as soon as I'm back inside and it connects to the Wi-Fi, it's synced and it's cool. So you can revert to previous versions. If I liked what I wrote down last week more, I can just revert back to that version. It doesn't lose my content. And the accountability factor, because I use this in a team environment, and a few people who run small businesses also have a team environment. You can see exactly who changed what on the sheet, and you can keep people accountable for their changes. You can't have somebody wake up in a bad mood and then all of a sudden just delete your entire content sheet. You can see exactly who did that. So now we've got content, we've got it in a nice plan, we're not overwhelmed, we're eating this elephant. What do we do now? Oh, and it's free. That's the last thing I forgot. And it's free. So now we talk to them. If anybody had to put me in a corner and say, Lizzie, what do you do? I tell them that I'm an engagement expert, because that is exactly what social media needs to be. It is a conversation. You can't invite a whole bunch of people over to your house and then stand in a corner and not talk to them. Some of the best apps are the ones that nag us for feedback, that constantly ask us, what do you think? What do you think? Are you having a good time? They incentivize 5 free lives if you just rate and comment. So why aren't we doing that with our people? We've put them in a space, place, and mindset where they're comfortable with us. Now we need to start these conversations with them. So I'm going to share one quick engagement case study with you, and then I want to take you through an interactive campaign that I recently built for one of my travel clients to help him just through this difficult time. John, how am I doing on time here? John? Okay, John's not going to stop me, so let's go.
You've got 4 minutes.
Okay. So everybody knows Empire, right? Massive show. When I worked on Fox, I walked in on episode 3 of season 1 without watching a single episode. That night, I hopped onto Twitter, started talking to some people, found the conversations, and the next morning when I walked into the office, I got called to the CEO. And I'm thinking, okay, that was cool. One day, I'm fired. That was nice. But when I sat down, he asked me, he's like, Lizzie, we trended. What did you do? I just talked to them. It was that simple. I was trending in the top 5 with the PSL, with international football games, organically, without influencers, without anything. Just by preempting conversations, finding people talking about the show, but not talking to our brand. Finding those conversations and just commenting and bringing them into the conversations. I got the episodes from that week on. I got the episodes in the morning. So I could preempt, plan, and perform. You know what's coming. You know people are out there talking about traveling, talking about adventures, yearning to get back out there. Go and find those conversations and relate to them. Don't sell, just connect. So if I had to, and I did, I tweeted a few weeks ago and I said, I am longing for an adventure, preferably somewhere under the stars. Any lodge in the Kruger Park could have jumped onto that and said, Lizzie, we can't wait to welcome you. We'll have the gin on ice. Just that connection is going to make me remember that. It's going to make me remember that brand, that lodge, those people, because they connected to me relevant, reliable, and real. They hit my R's. So this is, okay, I'm going to quickly finish off my deck so I can take you through my Instagram campaign. The quick recap is just my 4 R's, and I've showcased it even in my presentation. Relevant, COVID, we're all here. Reliable, I showed you a whole bunch of brands that I've worked on. I've I'm speaking with Jan and William that are heavyweights. So I've established authority there. Relatability, I gave you practical examples. And real, I showed you pictures of my dad. You don't get more real than that. So whenever you get stuck, I love this quote. It's printed and put up at my desk. Everything is figure outable. Digital isn't this big scary monster. The Google machine, it's inside joke, sorry. It's really, it's useful. There's so many free tools. There's so many amazing free webinars, videos. I taught myself how to Photoshop off YouTube. You can really do anything. So everything is figure outable. So yeah, that is me. John, if I can have 2 minutes to just quickly show off my Instagram, I would really appreciate that.
Lizzie, you can have as much time as you want. Everybody's asking for you to keep going.
Oh, yay.
So you obviously hit the mark, which is absolutely fantastic, because this is exactly what we wanted to do today, is we wanted to get everybody excited and we wanted everybody to benefit. So you have hit the mark and everybody's really asking for you to carry on. So don't rush. If there's anything else that you'd like to add, please feel free to add it, and we'll end when we end. Because
don't tell me to talk until people are sick of me, John. You know me so well. I'll talk until the cows come home.
No, well, okay. Maybe not until the cows come home. Maybe until the sheep go to sleep.
Okay, cool. Let me quickly show you my Instagram campaign. I just want to give a shout out to the amazing client. He is on the webinar. Thank you for allowing me to do this. It broke my brain, but I'm so happy with how it came out. So let me quickly share my screen again, and I will show for you my very nice Instagram campaign. So I have a client called Click Pack Go. I love them, and they really kind of let me run wild with ideas. And I got this great idea because people can't go to the Kruger right now. That doesn't stop us to bringing the Kruger to them. So this took me about a week and a half to build. The back end of this campaign is 21 email addresses with 21 different Instagram accounts. I've managed to annoy every free email tool that is out there, and I'm pretty sure my number is flagged on Instagram. So Take Me to the Kruger is an interactive drive where we want to bring the Kruger Park to you. So as soon as you open this up, you're going to tap to choose, and you can choose where you want to go. So let's go right. We found little hyenas. It's seems like we've run into a clan of hyenas. Did you know that the spotted hyena can run up to 60 kilometers an hour, and they can eat up to 1/3 of their body weight in a meal? Let's see what else we can find. So through the content, I didn't just show here's a little animal. It's the utility of adding a little did you know fact. I wanted to make it feel like there was an actual little game ranger in a car with you, showing you exactly what to do. And I learned this. I accompanied my dad on one of his game drives with international tourists one day. And I saw how he interacted with the guests and how they absolutely loved the fun facts and even the lame dad jokes. So I wanted to bring this experience to an Instagram environment, and this is what we built out. So now we can say just tasking. Let's see what that is. Ooh, an elephant. Also, fun fact, this entire campaign was built off of images that were taken in the Kruger Park. I think there's three images within this entire campaign that are Shutterstock images. The rest of them were either taken by my dad, my brother. I have a cousin that takes amazing wildlife pictures. Like I said, a bit of a bush baby. So I have this constant stream of great content from there. But go through your content and see what you can do with it. So here we have an elephant. It's a bit of a dead end, so we have to go back. I just want to play, I know this by heart, so I'm just going to play it through to the end so I can show you the emotive connection that we made at the end. So here's and they all have videos. It's a carousel. So there's more than one image to take you through and to really immerse you in the Kruger and give you that experience that you are seeing this animal. So purring sounds, that's now I need to just remember where we're going to. So the cheetahs, all the big 5 are all in here. You can see all of them. This was a really great video my dad got the one morning. So it puts you in the Kruger, and that was the whole plan of the campaign. And it's very fun and interactive, and it has cool little tips and tricks. Let's go to the wildest beasts. And from there, we go to stretch and stripes. I'm playing this through so I can take you to the end. But please go and play along and just experience it. All right. So once we get to the end, I started adding the emotive part to it and connected to it emotionally and really started pulling those heartstrings. So there's nothing better than driving out of the Kruger with this beautiful African sunset behind you. And those are the moments we're selling. I'm not selling the fact that you can see all these great animals. That's great. But that feeling of looking in the mirror, seeing the sunset over a little thorny bush, it's magic. So we said a sunset farewell. You have your 2 options when you stop. This feeling right here is what we're selling. And that is the content, and that is the connection and the emotions that you need to put out into your content, especially for the travel industry. I don't miss sitting on a plane for 14 hours, but I miss eating pasta in the squares in Rome. I miss having an ice-cold Aperol after exploring the city. Those things, that's what you need to connect to. So this is just some beautiful sunsets from the Kruger, and it's going to make people want to go there. Oh, hey, I just like my own content. So it's finding those emotional connections and really just not exploiting them, but exploring them to their full capacity and making people really yearn for these adventures. And it's the conversations. I'm just going to close this off and stop sharing my screen. All right. So the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that as soon as we start talking to people as brands, we turn into robots. And it's the conversations that we need to get back to. It's those 4 R's and the connections that we're building in our content that's really going to make our content stand out and give us the opportunity for the people to talk to us and to talk back to them. When you put out content that's simply saying, here's a 2-bedroom with a self-catering option, it doesn't give me the opportunity to talk to you and for you to talk back to me. But as soon as you start selling it as romantic breakaway or adventure under the stars, put your toes in the sand and reconnect with the ocean. I love doing that. So sell those emotions, and you know those emotions because you're human. It's the natural habitat marketing. We are customers that other brands are trying to sell to. So how would you react on content? Always read your content as your consumers. I've had so many people bring me reams and short stories of content they want me to put out. And I say, would you interact with this if it comes up on your feed? And they say no. Like, well, why are you expecting your customers to? They're not going to if you're not going to, because you are a customer to somebody else as well. So that is the kind of final thought for me. Write in your buckets, eat this elephant bit by bit by bit by bit. You're not going to get the whole thing in one sitting. And be patient with yourself. If this content piece doesn't work, just reword it. Try it again in 3 weeks from another angle. Don't throw it out completely. It's very much a playful space, and you're really going to have to say something really stupid for Facebook to burn you down. So play around. Just have fun and play with your community. And I think that is me, John.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you very much.
I've been told that I speak like I have diesel on my oats in the morning. So luckily I got through my deck quite quickly.
And I think everybody appreciated the fact that you were able to get through your deck as quickly as you did, without losing the focus of it and without jeopardizing the kind of content that you wanted to get across. The comments that are coming through on the chat line are absolutely incredible. I really truly want to say thank you very much to all the speakers, Jan, William, and you, Lizzie. Everybody is absolutely so positive about this series, and we are really, really excited about the fact that we're going to be bringing you some more about this type of work. I'm going to let William share the exciting news about what's coming up with you shortly. Just a couple of things that I'd like to say before everybody goes off is, first of all, the question and answer session. I'm really sorry that we didn't get to do the question and answer session live here. Unfortunately, time was not on our side. Jan's presentation was absolutely incredible, and I didn't want to cut her short at all because I wanted us all to get the information that we needed from what she had to say and share on a global perspective, because I think it's vitally important. Because tourism is a global platform, we need to understand what's happening globally. And if we're not getting the information locally, it's great that we get the information from global players. So I didn't want to cut Jan short at all. And I thought we would sacrifice the question and answer session in order for her to be able to complete her presentation, and then allow William and Lizzie to both do their presentations in full. What we have agreed with the speakers is that we're going to post the questions that you've asked with the answers in writing on our Facebook group. For those of you who want to join our Facebook group, you need to look down at the bottom of the screen, and you will see a green button that says join our Facebook group. You click there, exactly right below Lizzie, and you'll be able to join our Facebook group. And this Facebook group is your community as well. It's a community group that we've set up. We would love you to engage with us. Tell us some of your stories. Tell us how you are doing on your social media platforms. If you're starting to create stuff and learning some of the information from here, if you've got any questions, our experts, both Jan, William, and Lizzie, will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have on the Facebook group. So please go and join our Facebook group, and you will definitely benefit from that. Over to you, William. I believe you've got some really exciting news to share about the other side.
Thanks, John. I think just looking at the comments, we certainly are playing in a space that's very needed, and for us, we really want to be able to take the conversation and also the value that we're trying to unlock through these webinars further. So the best place to engage with us is obviously on the Facebook group. That's really where you have the opportunity to really kind of influence what the content is going to be and what we include. What we want to be able to do is make sure that we give you the right kind of feedback. We know there's a lot of questions around case studies and examples of other work and really great social media campaigns that are doing well overseas and locally. So I want to encourage you to join the group. And like John was saying, it's that big little button that says join our Facebook group right at the bottom of the speaking faces that you just need to click onto. The next 5 webinars that we're going to be bringing are going to be staggered over the next 3 weeks. Are going to happen every 3 weeks. And what we're going to aim to do there is dig in a little deeper into those topics that you heard us talk about earlier. So we're going to go into really helping you understand how to create great content with a content plan, and dig into the stuff that Lizzie was talking about, those buckets, how often you should be posting, which platforms you should be posting on when you see things working, etc. We're going to be talking about working with influencers. We're going to be talking about reputation management. We're going to be talking about how you set up your campaigns. So the kind of information we're going to dig into is going to be a lot more detailed and a lot more valuable than this session that we've done today. Today, we really wanted to respond to what we felt the industry was kind of asking for and crying out for. And I think from your comments, you've made that very clear that this is really the kind of thing that we should be paying attention to. So thank you for that. What we're going to be doing for the coming webinars is, along with those handbooks that we're preparing, we're going to ask you to pay us 250 Rand for each of the coming webinars. So that's 250 Rand that goes towards covering our costs, and it's going to be something that you'll be able to get a lot of benefit from, and also something tangible like that handbook that you can use to apply in all of your marketing, all of your advertising, and all of your social media going forward. So give us all the thumbs up and all the encouragement and all the feedback that we need on our Facebook page, so that we can make sure that the coming webinars are really tailored and suited for your specific needs. And we're also open to things like Zoom meetups, mail campaign examples, all the type of stuff that we're going to be hearing you talk about. We will respond and we will give you feedback as best as we can from our speakers and from our local content experts. So thank you very much.
Thank you, William. That is absolutely incredible. And I also just wanted to remind everybody that this webinar that we've been busy doing live is being recorded, and it will go live on this exact URL after we've closed down the session. So everybody will be able to go back to this URL and watch the same presentation over and over again as many times as they want to get the information that they need or might have missed. So that will be available here online for, I think it's eternity until we delete it. So we'll keep it running for some time still so that anybody can get the benefit of this presentation. And obviously the invitations and the registrations for the upcoming series will be going live in the next 24 hours once we finalized all the topics. So please stay tuned for that. Obviously, we will email everybody and keep everybody up to date about what's coming up over the next 5 series of these 6. Lizzie, any closing comments from you?
No, I'm just seeing all the people tuning in. Dankeschön, Hamburg. I've got some people from my hood, Pollux and Palaborva. Jessie mense, ek mis die bos. Ek wil huis toe kom. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm happy to pick up conversations on the group, on Twitter. I love talking about this type of thing. So let's do it.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Lizzie. And yes, we look forward to seeing everybody in the Facebook group. We look forward to engaging with you. We look forward to sharing this with you. We look forward to learning with you, and we look forward to helping you go into social media and helping you to make sure that you survive this COVID-19 and that you get all the necessary tourists back into your establishments just as soon as they can travel. And just looking at the polls quickly, so I can give you some feedback on the polls. One of the questions that we put into the polls is what sector should government be focusing on to unlock the tourism sector post-COVID-19? 72%, of course, said domestic tourism should be where government should be focusing on. So we definitely agree with that. And then obviously 27% said international. Of course, international is good traveling, but at this present moment in time when international traveling and domestic traveling is not allowed, I definitely believe that the key to unlocking tourism into the future post-COVID-19 will definitely come from the domestic sector, and that's where government should be focusing their attention on, just like they are doing in Australia currently. Then the next poll question was, do you believe that social media is appropriate to assist you in marketing your tourism business? We had 95.1% saying yes. Anybody who said no, which was only 1 vote, I'm not sure why you don't think social media is not good in assisting you with your tourism business marketing. Perhaps you'd like to elaborate that on the social media group, the person who voted no. And then we also had 1 person voting they were not sure if it worked and they needed more convincing. So hopefully after this session, we have convinced the doubter as to why it's vitally important that you remain on social media and remain visible, not in the dark. Then we also wanted to know the answer. Have you been spending more time on social media in the past month than you have been in the past? And we had a whole 95.1% saying yes, they have been. So that 77% that is globally is also very relevant to South Africa.
So there's actually a stat, John, that the average person scrolls through 90 meters of content on social in 1 day, which is the length of the Statue of Liberty. Whoa. But that was before COVID. I'm pretty sure that we are scrolling through like Burj Khalifa style feeds now. It is insane.
What's it with your Dubai?
I'm really wanting to go to Dubai. I want to go see Dubai.
That joke.
The next one, I'll focus on Amsterdam. I'll have a bunch of Amsterdam and Mexico hints in there.
Tequila.
The analogy that you used about the Dubai sand gets me every single time. William, any last words from you, my man?
I think this is a perfect opportunity for us all to kind of rethink what we need to do to reimagine it and to rebuild it. It's up to us to do this. We can't wait for other people to do it. The time is now for us to start building so that we're ready, so that when tourism starts to be relaxed and people start to be able to move around again, that we don't sit asking questions like, what should we do? We should now be working together and formulating plans that are ready for those people when they start to move around, and when restrictions are lifted, that we can work together. And I think what Jan was saying about starting simple, those baby steps, absolutely critical. And I love the idea of us working together to start to work on these road trips. How do we get road trips to become the new way of doing tourism for domestic travel, and how do we give them everything that they could possibly want in ways that they can start to feel and dream and experience now using social media, so that when they get off their couches, they can get in the road and actually do those things. So I think it's a perfect start. It's now up to us to make it work.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, absolutely. Agreed, 100%. Well, that's it, folks. We're a little bit over time, 20 minutes after the hour of 12 o'clock, but we had to make it happen, and we had to get in what needed to say. I want to say thank you, everybody, from attending all around the world. Yes, it's absolutely fantastic, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you, everybody, and don't forget to remember you can watch this right after I click end broadcast. The entire video will be available for you right here on this platform. Thank you very much, and tot ziens, goodbye.